month is Mission Impossible Fallout, and being that the Mission Impossible franchise is one of my favorite spy action series going on today, I thought I'd stop, rewatch the entire series, and review them on my channel leading up to Fallout. One of the things that makes this series a little bit interesting is that while the movies right now, the last two that have been released, have gotten great reviews, been well received by critics, audiences alike, and been done great at the box office, the first two movies weren't all that well received by the critics at the time. The first one only has 62%, the second one has 57%, and while they were big hits at the movies, they weren't particularly well regarded. And so in a lot of ways, this series has kind of gone up in its reputation as time has passed, where you get to the point in time where the fourth and fifth entries in a franchise are by far the best reviewed. That's pretty cool and kind of interesting to me. Before I start giving my thoughts on all this, go ahead and tell me down below in the comment section, what do you think about the original Mission Impossible movie? And are you familiar with the TV show, where it came from? Did you watch the first one after watching some of the later ones? All that kind of context of where you're coming from with this franchise. Let me know your thoughts on all of that fun stuff. With that said, I'll just kind of dive into this, talking about my history with the Mission Impossible franchise. So I grew up seeing some of the TV show. I never regularly watched it. It wasn't something that was a big family show for us, watching on syndication or anything like that. But I watched some episodes here and there. And then likewise, as it started to appear on streaming services, I've watched a little bit more of it over the last 4 or 5 years with my wife. And especially it's kind of fun because Leonard Nimoy's in a little bit of them. William Shatner's in an episode. It's just kind of fun to see the Star Trek actors in there. But for me, my big exposure to this was that original Tom Cruise movie. And I mean, I have the distinct memories of seeing it at the Lakeline Mall movie theater when that theater is brand new, state of the art. What maybe the first movie I saw at that theater once it opened, and just such distinct memories from that period of time in my life. And so I've kind of been with this franchise as a movie franchise since it first came out and was their opening weekend for basically every single one of these movies. So it's kind of fun for me to kind of now do a series like this and talk about them leading up to a new release and maybe have some great conversations with all of you. With that said, let's start talking about the good. And the thing that I think is best about the first entry in this series is that it is unashamedly a spy movie. And what I mean by that is once you got past this first movie, they become spy action movies. Second one directed by John Woo. John Woo known for his gunplay in his movies. So tons of gunplay, some more martial arts type stuff and slow-mo spinny kicks from Tom Cruise. Then the third one is a J.J. Abrams pick that kind of cranks up, the action once again. Lots of machine gun fires, chases and things like that. And that's what you saw as well in Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation. This first one is a spy movie. Ethan Hunt, I don't believe ever fires a gun in the movie. There are some gunfires, mostly from the bad guys, though. I'm not sure if any of the good guys shoot guns in the movie. There are some action sequence, there's some spectacle and things like that, but that's just kind of like the spice on the movie. It's much more about identities, masks, kind of sneaking into places, working around scenarios, spy stuff, and it's not afraid to be that at all. And it almost feels a little bit like some of the more spectacle, the train sequence were tacked on a little bit later on as the special effects, some of them is weaker than a lot of the other things in the movie. And so that's one of the things that just makes this movie pop, is that it's not reliant on machine gun fire punches. It's about Brian De Palma building tension and actual kind of thrills and edge of your seat type moments in scenes. So the most famous scene in this movie wasn't a big loud spectacle sequence. It's not the train sequence at the end, which people remember. No, it's the quiet sequence and a mouse walking up, and they have to be quiet, and they're just someone getting the sniffles and things like not fastest chase, the mayhem, the carnage. No, it's about real small scale, finding the little things that make you tense as you're watching it, things that make you hold your breath and make a whole audience go. And you're just watching, like, the part of it, you're literally watching a drop of sweat go down his glasses and then fall. And you're going, and he catches it in his hand. That is masterful storytelling. And it's not a big action movie. It's unashamedly a spy movie, and that's what this movie does very well, is building that tension in the scenes, in the sequences, as things are switching around, who's who, what's kind of going on, twist turns, all that fun stuff. Also, it's a movie that has Jon Voight as Jim Phelps, the leader of the team at the beginning of the movie, and perhaps has a different role as the movie progresses. Of course, you got Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is not in this movie. You got Tom Cruise in the lead, Jean Reno as one of the guys that gets added to the crew in the middle of it, Ving Rhames, of course, and then many more people that are familiar faces from the 90s, actors that have gone on to have great careers over the last 20, 25 years. Everyone in this just kind of brings their A game. It's a great cast all the way down to the smaller characters inside of the movie. And it's also a film that's just loaded with little iconic moments and shots. Because of the way De Palma directed the movie, where it's not just about big explosions and generic things, you notice the details, and that's kind of what starts to make them iconic, or they're clever, interesting shots and crafted in a way that makes them memorable. So if you just kind of go through it, there's like this gum thing in it, red light, green light, when these kind of two things come together, it explodes. And so we're just kind of like in a restaurant, and Tom Cruise throws gum and hits the table that his camera's on, and it blows up, and he has to run out as water's flying behind him. It's this iconic shot. But even the gum itself is iconic inside the movie as they describe it, they talk about it. The colors of it are things that you remember as you watch the movie. The end sequence, there's this shot in it that was used in many trailers and many like DVD trailers and Blu-ray trailers all throughout the years, as they're trying to have just cool shots in movies, as the propeller blade from the end of the movie almost hits Tom Cruise's neck. It's just one of those moments in it where you're like holding your breath. Like, I know they're not going to kill Tom Cruise, but it just barely misses him, and it's just such a great shot. And then, of course, the Langley sequence that we already talked about, whether you're talking about Tom Cruise dangling from the ceiling, dangling right across the floor, the drop of sweat going down the glasses, the whole thing is just very iconic, memorable, very nicely crafted inside of these little sequences, what De Palma was able to do with the movie. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects of this film. And I think the big things that kind of come to mind here is the way that they chose to use the original series. So the movie starts off with this sequence where there's kind of this stage set and they're doing some spy stuff right out of the original series. Very much kind of the sort of thing that you would see in an episode of that. The recruitment scene at the beginning where they get the message on the plane and your mission should you choose to accept. Classic Mission Impossible. The team comes together, classic Mission Impossible, and they go do a mission. And then likewise, the fact that they brought Jim Phelps, the lead character of the original show, into this, and all kind of cool that they did all that. But this is mixed because that's not really what the movie is. That's not where things end. That's not where things stop. The movie veers in this different direction from being about a Mission Impossible Mission Force team to being about Tom Cruise getting some people to break into Langley and trying to figure out who was did all the stuff to him. And so it doesn't really continue. Like it gives you a taste of the original series, and then kind of does its own spy thing that's quite different from what the series actually was. And then more importantly, it's cool that they brought Jim Phillips into it, and that they had some twists and turns along the way, and they were interesting, bold in their decisions. But if you haven't seen it, spoilers, they make the start of the original TV series the villain. Now, I think for like people my age, like I didn't feel the betrayal of this when I first watched this movie. It wasn't anything like that for me. And certainly if you're watching this, you're under 25 years old, watching it now, you'd be like, what are you talking about? What's the big deal? This is like if they did the Star Trek reboot and they made Kirk the villain. You make the audience mad when you do that. It's a weird direction to take to go, it's a great unexpected plot twist. Let's make the hero the villain in a way that's not like earned. It's not like there's some explanation for it. It's not Vin Diesel and Fate of the Furious. It's just the hero of the old series has turned evil in this rendition of it. not the best move. And so I do appreciate that they tried to incorporate some things in the style of the original, but they don't really play it out. And then making the main character evil, not really a great move with that one. From there, we'll move on to the bad. And this movie's got some issues when it comes to the story. When it comes to the individual sequences and how they're crafted and how exciting they are, De Palma does a great job. The story, it has some problems. Just like right off the bat, the story in general, I just don't know that it makes a lot of sense. Ethan's plan to like clear his name of, someone stole the fake knock list, or the mole stole the fake knock list and they set me up, so I'm going to steal the real knock list and then set up this what? You've been framed for stealing the fake knock list, so you're going to steal the real knock list and put it out in the open? There's probably a better way to do this. Even the way it kind of plays out with him cracking deals, the Job and whenever we do this deal, I want to make sure that Job's there. With the way that kind of plays out, where he's like bargaining to get the other person to have to be at the meetup at the end of the movie. It's like, I don't think that that's how the criminal underground works. I'm pretty sure that if someone demanded that someone else not a part of this particular transaction had to be there, this person over here would not show up because they would know that it was a double cross. And so there's several things kind of like that where it's like the way the story fits together, it doesn't make sense. There's not a lot of logic to it, and it pulls you out of it quite a bit as you're trying to go like, why are they doing this? What's his plan again? Why would they do this? And I don't know if there was what the history was on the script here, but it feels like a lot of last minute rewrites, trouble pulling the pieces together, and they had to work with what they had because action sequences work, script, a lot of trouble in there. And one of the big issues with the script and the way things kind of play out, there's this big twist in the movie that our mentor, lead character from the TV show turns out evil. And it legitimately boils down to him shooting a video where he does this. Like that's in the movie. Like, how does he fake his death? He shoots a video where he goes like this. And, I watched I've known the twist since I watched it that first time over 20 years ago. So I don't know how I would watch this movie now and be like, well, that's just a hand doing this. But this is like, of all the ways to have him fake his death and trick people and make it this number with a gun? Are you kidding me? Like, how you couldn't come up with anything better than him turning his hand to fake shoot himself and then grab a cloth with fake blood like this? I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of any sense at all, much like the overall way the story plays out. And then there's sequences in the movie that are just confusing. In particular, the one where after they've stolen the real knock list at Langley, and then Ethan Hunt meets up and Jim shows up there, and they have this situation where they're sitting there, and Tom Cruise is figuring it out as Jim's telling him what happened. Jim's lying to him about what's happening, but we're seeing Tom Cruise's guesses as to what really happened. And it's weird. It doesn't land right. It's very confusing the way it's done. So I was watching this with my wife 3-4 days ago. She's been watching this movie for 20 years. She's probably watched it with me 7 times or something like that. Just in the years when we've been married, we've probably watched it like 7 times. And we're watching it a few days ago, and she's like, so is what's happening here that Ethan is piecing it together? Because what they're showing doesn't line up with what the other guy's saying. I don't understand. It's like, right, it's not a particularly well put together sequence. It doesn't work right. It's confusing as to what you're seeing. And that's not something that should be confusing in a movie like this. You should be able to follow better what they're trying to communicate in certain moments, and they should have found a better way to visualize Ethan Hunt thinking through what was happening. And then finally, one of the funniest oopsies in this movie, or goofs, is the use of computers, the internet, and email in this movie. I remember reading an article, I think in Entertainment Weekly, whenever this movie came out. So apparently I was reading Entertainment Weekly back when I was in high school. And they were talking about how computer screens are going to be the downfall of movies because of the rise of spending so much time with characters sitting there typing in a computer and just showing the screen. and they're like, this is going to be bad for movies. And, you know, obviously that hasn't killed movies, and we spend lots of time watching characters sitting at computers. But what they missed was how hilariously bad the knowledge of the internet and email is in this movie, and how much a throwback it is to like your internet user groups and things like this that I barely remember what they were like. I was involved in a little bit of that stuff back in the day, and I can barely remember it. And so you watch this movie and he's like searching through user groups, like what is he doing right now? And it's even more confusing because he starts to send emails, and he sends an email to Job at 314. Not 314.com, not Job at 314 at Gmail or anything like that. Job at 314 or 314 at one of those things where you're like, that's not an email address. And so you watch it now because you're kind of confused. Is like, is that how the internet worked? No, that's not how it worked. The screenwriter and director just didn't seem to know how computers worked back in the day. So watching it's always, every time I watch this movie, it gets sillier and sillier how these sequences kind of played out in the movie. So overall, this is a movie that it delivers some great sequences, some very iconic sequences. As you're watching it, the thrill ride's fun enough as you go through it. But as you sit back and think about it, there's a lot of stuff that you go, that's dumb. That doesn't make a lot of sense. For me, I would score this one a B. Good, solid movie, definitely not a great movie, and an 8 out of 10 on an entertainment level. There's some great, iconic, memorable sequences in this one there. That's some of the most thrilling, edge of your seat in the entire franchise. Now, not the number one most thrilling sequence in the entire franchise. Ghost Protocol is going to get the winner on that one. Probably the second most kind of thrilling, edge of your seat sequence of this franchise up to this point in time. Anyway, how about you? What did you think about this movie? Are you new to it? Like maybe you're someone that watched it for the first time because you knew I was going to review it and because you know Fallout's coming out. Or have you been watching it for 20 years and maybe you've been watching Mission Impossible going back 50 years ago. You watched the original show when it first aired. Tell me your kind of take on this movie in context of your experience with the franchise. And be sure to come back next Monday as we talk about Mission Impossible 2. Not many people's favorite of the franchise, that one. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos. The key thing is I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me down in the comment section. Let's have a lively discussion. If you're not new to my channel, you've already clicked that subscribe button. Think about ringing that bell so you get notifications whenever I post a new video. And as always, thank you so much for watching.